Hey, thanks for checking out this week's video. So as you may have noticed, this video is actually about a week late. I'm so sorry for that. I've been really ill this past week. I'm still not fully recovered. I'm hoping you can't hear my voice. I'm full of cold and I'm trying not to let it come through on the voiceover. But yeah, I've only just been able to get around to doing the voiceover because it was so painful to speak until recently. So I hope you don't mind it being a bit late. And before I really get into this video, don't forget I still have a giveaway going on my channel. I'll post a link to the video where you can find out exactly how to enter, but you can win one of these 3 original paintings and a set of Mars Lumograph Black pencils by Staedtler. So this week I thought I would cover something a bit different. And I don't usually do this with all my paintings, but recently I've been trying to put in a bit more effort to the planning of a painting beforehand, particularly when it comes to the values and the colour, because I still really struggle with the colour side of things. So I see a lot of people doing thumbnails and things like that, and I thought, I hate thumbnails. To be honest, I really hate thumbnails. It's too small, so I feel like, right, I'm just going to do this really quick and it doesn't need to be neat, but then it ends up being so messy that it's just completely useless. So I thought I already have my digital sketch done in Photoshop, I can print it out and try and colour that. So that's exactly what I did. I printed it onto, not printer paper, it's a bit thicker, it's just more like a cardstock, maybe even a bit thinner than cardstock to be honest. So it's not made for paint. So in Photoshop I resized the sketch to fit 4 times on a piece of A4 paper, and then once it had printed out, I don't use special ink or anything, it is like the cheapest ink I can get, and my printer isn't a good printer either, it is just literally for like documents. So once I had done, I thought I gave it a quick spray with some fixative by Winsor & Newton, just so it didn't completely smudge and ruin everything. So with the test images ready to go, I figured I'd start off by doing a value study for the first one. Now I am using a reference photo for this. It is pretty much a patchwork reference. It's got so many different pieces. I even think I took pictures of my hands because they weren't in the right position. So the lighting isn't quite the way it should be. So I thought I'd do a quick value study just to see whether or not it looks okay. And I was quite happy with it. So I just did the one and then I decided to go straight into the colour. So here you can see I am using my colour wheel. I definitely recommend one of these if you don't have one already. Even if you are familiar with the colour wheel, just having a hard copy of the reference that is interactive is brilliant. As you can see here, I'm sort of lining up ideas for the colour choices. One thing that I knew I wanted to do for this piece, obviously she's got a pumpkin and a pumpkin is orange. So I wanted to choose my other colours based around that. Here you can see I am using a split complementary. I don't know how well you can read the middle, so I'm just going to quickly explain this. So I said before I chose an orange because of the pumpkin, so that's where I started, and then I usually base it on a split complementary, which is where you find the complementary of that colour, which is always the opposite on the colour wheel, and then you choose the 2 colours either side of it, which makes it a split complementary. So in this case it was orange, the complementary is blue, and then the 2 either side of that would be the blue violet and the blue green. So when I started painting, I actually kind of changed my idea. I spun around the split complementary to the other side, although the only thing that actually changed was instead of a blue violet, it became a red, and then I kept the other 2 colours the same. If colour theory is something that confuses you or that you would like to know more about, there is an amazing video on YouTube by Blender Guru. I'll put a link to it in the description box below. I highly suggest checking it out, it is really informative. So onto the painting. This is me just mixing up those colours that I showed you before, and I'm keeping this really loose because, like I said, this is just a printout. It is just a throwaway piece of paper that I can be super loose and experiment with and just see what works really. But this is where the happy accidents happen, because you're being so loose and not caring too much. Some things happen that you don't really care about because it's rough. You might like them, you might hate them, but either way you learn from them. I found one thing that I particularly liked when I was doing this was that I was so impatient I didn't let all the paint dry before painting an adjacent area. So the colours would bleed, in particular the pumpkin bleeds into what's painted below, and I actually really like that effect because the bottom half of this painting is kind of loose. I don't know what it is with me and water. I like the idea of everyone being in water for some reason. I don't know. But the effect that it creates, I really liked, and so I'll probably try to replicate that in the final piece, which I wouldn't have even thought to try if I hadn't done these, so I guess that's part of it, not just figuring out the colours, but also the technique that you want to use. So as I'm putting these colours down, I'm just trying to keep my value study in mind. I don't have to stick to it exactly, but it's a good guide for me to go on. I take it quite slowly. I mean, this is gouache I'm working in, and you know me guys, I use it really watered down. It might as well be watercolour, at least in the early stages. So I've started really lightly, just getting those basically assigning colours to each sort of shape in the piece. And then as I'm going, I'm thinking, oh, this is looking a bit too flat, I need to add more saturation here, I need to darken this, and so on and so forth. And I just kind of keep going until I think it looks okay. So one thing I found that I really like about doing these tests is that I can really push the colours. For instance, I used the blue of the background to sort of do the shading on her skin, and I try and saturate it more than I probably would have done if I'd have just gone straight into the final piece. And I do this in every single one, like I try and emphasize those unusual colours that you don't always see in the skin. Also see at the end here, I wasn't completely satisfied with the blue in the background. It was too blue. Although it was a lovely blue, it wasn't what I intended. I wanted it to be a blue-green, so I kind of did a light wash of green over the top to adjust it to what my initial idea was. Okay, so on to the next one. For this I went for a more traditional Halloweenish sort of colour vibe. Purples and oranges and yeah, just the colours that I think of when I think of Halloween. I think she turned out to be perhaps my favourite. I'm not sure. Sometimes I look at it and I think that it's just too obvious. But then other times I quite like how harmonious it all looks together. I don't know. So again, I'm just going in with the same sort of approach, blocking in the initial colours and worrying about values afterwards. I've already done it once, so it does go much faster after this. I think for this one I do try to use silver instead, because in the first one I did a gold embellishment. Then I thought, you know what, I haven't used silver in ages, and I always think sort of purples with it being cooler might look nicer with a silver, which is also cooler. So I thought, why not, let's give it a go. But it turns out it is much more shiny than the gold, much more shiny than I remember. So I'm not entirely sure yet whether or not I will use gold or silver. So let me know what your preference is, and do excuse the very sloppy application of this stuff. It's terrible. It was just to give me a very rough idea of whether or not it worked. And last up, you see me there having another quick look at my colour wheel. This time I kind of wanted something that wasn't as vibrant, although I think the end result is still quite vibrant, to be honest. I had it in my mind that I wanted something more desaturated because I had gone so strong with the other ones, but then I kind of liked the blue, and then I kind of liked the yellow, and then I was just like, colour and stuff. So according to my social media, this one seems to be the most loved. Although there was love for all of them, I do think this one was the front runner and probably the one that I'll go with. And I have to admit, I like how the skin turns out on this one. I think I probably, because it was the last one, I was just like, oh, let's just throw all the colour on. It's fine, we can always wipe it back off as you see me doing right now. I'm like, it's fine, we can always just paint back over it. Because again, it's a test, and I think the end result on this one, I know it's all rough and it looks rubbish, but I feel like the skin on this one has a lot more depth and the other ones don't. So yeah, I think this was good learning for me. So I've pretty much covered everything that I can cover in this video without repeating myself. The next video you see on this channel will be a quick announcement of the winners from the competition that I am running. Don't forget, if you haven't entered and you still want to enter, there is time. Check out the link in the description box below. I'll post to the video explaining it and also to the actual competition where you can go over all the terms and conditions and all that good stuff. The competition will end on the 25th of November at 1 minute to midnight, just to be super specific, and that's based on London time GMT. So hopefully a couple of days after that I'll be able to post a very quick announcement here on YouTube just to say who the winners are. Do remember that I'm not sending out any email notifications, so if you do win, you need to check out that announcement video or you might miss out. You've got 48 hours to message me and claim it, otherwise I'll just pick somebody else until all prizes are gone. That about wraps it up for this week. Let me know what you thought of this. Do you have a similar process before you start painting your final piece? What do you do differently? What do you find helps? What do you find doesn't help? For me, it's thumbnails. Anything that is too small, I just can't take seriously enough. This size seems to be good because I can put enough effort into it that I can get an idea of where I actually want to take my final piece, but it's still small enough that I can be really loose and just experiment. So if you liked the video, don't forget to give it a like, and if you want to see more, then do hit that subscribe button. Until next time, bye!